Hi, name Dan. Make Gundam. So, the arms are next. Now, I'm not thinking about the parts I'm going to be making next as I'm making them. I've thought about the arms and shoulders ever since I got the body done, or as I was doing the body. These shoulders are big. It may have a horizontal length of 2 feet. And when I hold that up against the body, it's over there, it's long. So having 2 feet come off each side of the body, plus the width of the body, which is about 16 inches or so, that's gonna come out to about 64 inches, which is 1 inch taller than me. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna aim for in terms of the horizontal length. The actual length of the shoulder, I'm not sure what that's gonna be yet, but yeah, this is gonna be a big, wide cosplay. But for the shoulders, since they are 2-piece like this, I do plan on making this secondary piece removable. It'll attach with magnets. So that way, if I need to get through like a narrow area or something, I can have someone remove those for me, and then I can just go through. Or I could just walk sideways through it. Like if I go to a con, I don't know how big that doorway is gonna be. So I just gotta make it work somehow when I'm wearing it at a con or whatever.
The arms consist primarily of 3 pieces, upper, lower, and the additional shield-like piece on the lower arm. The upper arms have quite a bit of shape to them, so I make each side individually since each side is different. Again, this is based off the Gundam Universe figure. The original design is pretty much just a plain square tube, and yes, that would have been much easier to make compared to what I'm making. I eventually get the front and side pieces made. You can see how radical the shapes are for just the upper arm. And here's how it'll fit on me. It'll stick out past my shoulder width since the body was made wider on purpose. That means I'll have to walk around with my arms out, which shouldn't be too much of a problem when everything is eventually all together. Before I finish the upper arms, I start making the lower arms. You can see the template there. I felt I needed to make the lower arms first so I can figure out things with the upper arm design and also how I would mount them together. The lower arms were fairly easy to make. It's just a shaped box that oddly enough reminds me of the stereotypical coffin shape. Maybe that was intended? Anyway, they went together pretty quick.
So I've got the majority of the forearms done here, and these will just go on like so. I wanted to make these the base of the forearm before I figure out what to do with the upper arm here. I'll show you how these look like together. Look roughly like that. And then this will bend with my arm. It does shift on my arm. Right now, the end of the cuff here is lined up with my wrist. But if I hold it and then I straighten my arm, you can see how much more my wrist shows. Here, I'll show you. Then when I compress, see how my wrist goes inside it. Connect these on a joint that's pretty much fixed like that. So it seems like the pivot point would be about up here or so. Don't bother with that. I know it's very visible. I just had a minor procedure today, so they sliced my ear open. Nothing serious. I can keep them separate as well, but my only concern with that is this. I don't want to be walking around while everything is crooked. The upper arm, I should go ahead and make the back piece, but I do need to figure out this side. I might just have to use 6mm foam or whatever thin foam I have that's sturdy just for the inside here, because there's not going to be a lot of room on this side of the arm. it's pretty much going to be jammed up against the body.
I make the inner wall of the upper arm out of 5mm foam and some styrene to add reinforcement. These will need to be both thin and rigid since they'll be right up against the upper body. I attach them to the upper arm and add the back piece, which is just a plain curved panel. This completes the assembly of the upper arms. I decided to attach the arm pieces on a single elbow joint. I fashioned up a cardboard version to help give me a better idea.
Okay, so I got both arms assembled. Now, can I put these on and throw the upper body on? Gotta try it. Rock'em sock'em robot. Now you saw me struggle a bit there. I'm trying to miss this ear because, like I said, I had a little operation on it. There's stitches on it. So I'm trying to miss the ear so it doesn't, you know, get on it. But is the body on? Look at that. I have to keep my arms up because they will slide down, unfortunately. But yeah, that's the look. Now the arms, unfortunately, with the overall look, will look short because my arms are not as long as the figure in proportion. So that's one thing. Man, I look stupid right now. My upper arm method is working. It's kicking the upper arms out there since they can't be in because the body's wide, but I'm holding the bottom of the lower arm here just so they stay up. I'm testing movement. I can barely touch my hands now. I can't even because it's so boxy, bulky. But yeah, that's the upper arms. Yeah, this looks great. I feel like a freaking transformer. Maybe if I stuck some pipes on the shoulders, I'd be Optimus Prime. Smokestacks. I'm actually using craft foam for the elbow joint, and I think that's fine because the craft foam is flexible, so it'll give it some play, which is okay. So I won't be fully restricted, but it's a strong enough joint. All it does is this. It's not under any real kind of stress. It's not really, yeah. It is shifted a bit when I put it on my arm, but it's not that big of a deal. Still works just fine. And the lower arms, I need to finish them off with the shield-like piece that goes on the outside here, and then the cuff that goes over here. And that should be it for the arms.
The shield-like part for the lower arms is next. I use a combination of craft foam and floor mat foam to make the cuff part. Then some floor mat foam for the shield-like part, along with some 2mm foam for the border detail. Then I attach both pieces. I also test fit it on the arm to see how it looks. Now, I won't be gluing these together yet until after I painted them, because it'll be really hard to paint as I won't have access to the area between the lower arm and the shield.
So I've come to a realization that the upper arm is too big. More specifically, it's too wide. The size of everything else is fine, but it's quite big. So what I'm thinking of doing to shrink it, this side is fine against the body. This side is sticking out too far. I have a 10mm piece of foam here, as you can see. I'm thinking of shrinking it down to eliminate the need for this. Now this seems to be a running theme with this cosplay. I've had to redo the head. I redid the body. I redid some of the skirt armor as well. Now I'm redoing the arms. Now the lower arms here are fine. I did make a little adjustment on these. I shrunk these down just a bit, quarter inch or so at least. Just because I wanted more of the arm joint to show, so it doesn't look short and stubby like this, because that's what it looks like. And especially with how big the upper arm is in terms of the width compared to the lower arm. I'm gonna cut this side off, take that off, and I may have to section this piece here. I'll just cut it, section of what, 10 millimeters maybe? Since I'm trying to, yeah, I think that's right. Since I'm trying to eliminate this 10 millimeter piece here. So yeah, and the upper arm, thankfully, luckily, is gonna be the white color. If it was gonna be a dark color, then I'll have to do a lot more in terms of finishing, because I'm gonna be pretty much cutting this front here in half and sectioning it. Well, not really in half. I'll probably do it along the side or something. So, being a lighter color and being under the shoulder, I'm hoping the legs. Nah, it'll happen. I'll have to change something on the legs like that. It's a running theme, I guess. I'm getting used to it, and it does improve my skills working with foam. I've already had to take things apart and modify them, stick them back together. So I guess that increases my skill doing that with foam. So yeah, let's do it. Let's cut this bastard. Well, okay. It actually wasn't that bad. Obviously, you have to take your time, think about the moves you're gonna make. But this turned out really good. So here's the new width of the upper arm. Here's the other side that I didn't do yet. You can see the size difference now. This is obviously narrower. Roughly 10 millimeter difference in width, since I eliminated this piece there. So that way it just mounts to the arm like so. Nice and even. And it's a good size to the lower arm now. This doesn't stick out too far. You can see how much wider that is. It's quite a significant amount. So now the upper arms aren't too bulky. It still fits me just fine since my arm goes in this way. But yeah, so this is the arm. It still looks so plain. It's just how the design is, and the figure doesn't have a lot of detail. There are no panel lines at all up here. I guess because it's nice and shapely. There's a panel line that runs along this, and that's it. And then this piece here, which will go on like this, it's got some detail on it. This is pretty much how the arm will look.
I move on to the shoulders. It's a two-piece design with some trim detail and some vents and thrusters. I use floor mat foam since these shoulders are going to be quite big and I need them to be as light as possible. I do my best to make sure they flare out towards the bottom. This required angle cuts and a uniquely shaped upper panel. The edges of the shoulders are rounded, so before I use my sanding drum, I cut away at some of the foam at an angle to help reduce sanding time and foam dust.
So I rounded one shoulder, one edge of the shoulder, you can see. Pretty satisfied with how far I've done with it. Looks pretty good. This is floor mat foam, so I have to be really careful. I'm just touching the foam. I'm not applying any pressure to it. Because if I did, I'd get some pretty bad gouges. That actually took a while to do. I'll just have to do it 3 more times.
After rounding the shoulder edges, I start making the trim detail, and here's my pattern. I traced the pattern onto the shoulder to both give me a good idea of how it'll look and where I'll need to apply contact cement. I use 2mm HD foam for the trim, and I start on the vent detail that hangs off the shoulder. The great part about symmetry is you only need one pattern.
So I've got two of the pieces made here, and I did it different ways. This one I did by making individual panels and gluing them together. This one I did by cutting channels into it, so that way I could just fold it like that. And they pretty much are the same, just different method. There's nothing wrong with this one. I'm gonna use this one because it's made, but I'm gonna use this method of cutting the channels and just folding it. It's a much cleaner look. It will fit on the shoulder like so. Then I just have to do the bottom piece. But yeah.
I make the bottom pieces the exact same way, just slightly different in shape. To make the vent detail that goes into them, I first cut out a section of the piece. I glue it onto the shoulder with contact cement. I use some scrap floor mat foam to fill in the back of the vent, just tracing the shape onto it, cutting it out, and gluing it onto the backside. And for the vent detail, I used pieces of 2mm HD foam, which completes the look. I begin to work on the second shoulder pieces, starting out with a pattern for the side.
Now I didn't show it to you when I made the first part of the shoulders, but I'm doing the same thing for the second part. This is the top strip. You can see on the bottom here, it's cut at 90 degrees, but as it goes through, let me show you, it's at an angle, as you can see. So from the overall length of it, because it's angled, will be angled here, and then as it goes, curves down to here, it's 90 degrees. So it is guesswork. Just a lot of staring at it, eyeballing it, fine-tuning it. So I do need to shave a little bit more off there, I believe. Let me see. Got the correct side here. And it's always best to test it on your pieces, just to make sure that they will fit.
So unfortunately my audio wasn't captured in this clip, so I'll have to overdub it. You can see one assembled second shoulder part, and it's got a little bit sticking out still. I plan to curve that end after I shave the edges round. As I mentioned before, I plan on making the second shoulder piece removable, just in case I need to shed some width. I cut an opening into the main shoulder for the second part to insert. I plan on attaching the shoulders to the body using large bolts. I also reinforce the body and shoulders with polyethylene cutting board material. And I plan on 3D printing washers to help both reduce friction between the parts and keep them spaced out. I trimmed the shoulder tips with 2mm HD foam. I just made one pattern that fit both sides of both shoulders. Yay for symmetry! For the actual tips, I just cut a piece of foam using the trim and tip shape as a guide. I start making the thrusters that go into the shoulder tips. I used the template maker to generate a truncated cone pattern to make them using 5mm craft foam. I marked and cut off the ends of the cones to use as a detail piece for the thruster tip. It'll just slip over the thruster cone like so. To glue them on, I put them together while the contact cement is still wet. I doubt I'll be able to shimmy them into place if I waited until they dried because it's somewhat of a snug fit, so leaving it wet allowed me to position the ring in place. And the thruster will go into the shoulder like so. I always thought it was weird since it just sticks out like this with no flow or anything, like it was an afterthought. I make the other thruster that mounts to the shoulder. This one is pretty much just a box. I cut out all the pieces I need and assemble it. It'll mount to the shoulder like so. For the thruster detail, I make a ring out of 5mm foam, and I also glue it into the box with wet contact cement so I can position it right where I want it to be before the glue dries. There's a vent on the shoulder tip. I make it by cutting out the area and pushing it in to make it recessed. I also cut the 2 vent lines into it and use a heat gun to shrink the foam a bit and open the cut lines. The thruster cones also have a bit of detail. I used thin cardboard to make the little diamonds. There are panel lines that outline the tops of the vents, and that's it. Not a lot of panel lines for the shoulders. I complete the detail of the arm shields using editing magic. With all the details done, I plasti dip all the parts 2 to 3 coats. Prior to this, I heat sealed the pieces with my heat gun, used Alex Flex where needed, and also applied contact cement on the sanded edges. For the shoulder thrusters, I used gray plasti dip, and I think I'll leave them be. It's a pretty good color. To mount the shoulders to the body, I drill a hole into both the body and the shoulder and use a metal collar sleeve with some custom 3D printed washers to attach them together. I'll use a large bolt, washers, and a locking nut to hold everything in place. And now for painting. I decided to paint these parts by hand with a brush instead of an airbrush. The PlatFX paint goes on really smooth and doesn't leave streaks as it self-levels before it dries. I did use a bit of water as well to both allow for self-leveling and to save on some paint. And because I'm painting by hand, only 1 good coat was needed. For the yellow trim, I first laid on a coat of white as a base since painting yellow on dark foam would take many coats, but it only took a few coats for the white. The yellow seems to go on thinner and still required at least a few coats. I eventually get the shoulder thrusters on, the arms assembled, and the shoulders mounted to the body.
And here it is. Shoulders, arms, all rigged up on my stand. I know what you're wanting to see, me putting all this on. Well, I actually did try, and it needs some work. It's not easy to put on. I know, like I said in my first video, I was gonna try to make this so that I can put on myself. I will need help. Now there are some things that I still need to do with what I made, especially the arms. I do have straps for the arms, so I'll be doing that because there's still an issue with them sliding off my arms, so that should help them stay. I'm also still working on the shoulder joints where they connect to the body, just tweaking that, making it a little better. Right now they do work okay, it does move nicely, but it could be better. What do you think of this? Very crazy looking. Just seeing this all put together like that. You know, as I'm making these parts, they seem big when I'm putting them together and just holding them, looking at them. But seeing it all together like this, it is big, but not as big as I think it is, because I'm looking at it through my phone right now, and it's see how I'll be. How is it like that? It's not too bad. As I said before, I did try putting most of it on. I didn't have one arm on, I didn't have the head on. It was very clunky and bulky, and I still need to refine some things to make it easier to wear. So this is an arm. Pretty straightforward, one movement. You're probably thinking, well, what about the hands? I will be making the hands in the last video. There's good reason for that, and you're gonna see. So yeah, the legs will be next. I'm not sure when I'll be starting on that. I do have a few side projects that I need to work on. Like I said, I do have a few things I still need to do and some tweaking, but this is generally the look of the damn thing. But let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Let me know if you guys have any like ideas in terms of how to keep the arms on. Like I said before, I will be putting straps into them so that they stay on my arm. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this one. Sorry I didn't put it on because I'm still working on something. I just have this here and I'm recording this bit just to end this video. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next video. I could just stare at this thing all day. But then I won't get anything done. Like, how come you didn't make the legs yet? Because I'm just staring at this.